and I'm very excited about this panel that we have today. Our moderator for our panel is Tawana Lofton. Tawana has been a member of the Single Parent Committee for the past 4 years. She is the case coordinator of the community services for the city of Gaithersburg. She is committed to serving the residents of the city of Gaithersburg. She has 2 master's degrees, MS and an MSW, and is a single mother of 3. So Tawana, we turn the panel over to you. Thank you, Tawana.
Thanks, Beverly. So our featured speakers are Deborah Phelps, Nico Washington, Michael Yehl, and Carolina Avila. And I'm going to read their bios really quick. Deborah Phelps is widely recognized as an innovative, energetic, and talented leader and master teacher with more than 4 decades of teaching and administrator experience. A native of Allegheny County, Ms. Phelps received her master's degree in education management and supervision from Loyola College and BA in education from Fairmont State College. The proud mother of 3 children and grandmother of 6, Ms. Phelps is a board member of the Michael Phelps Foundation and a highly sought-after motivational speaker and author. Nico Washington has over 31 years of experience in executive support for finance, accounting, budget planning, strategic planning, project management, leadership, and administration. Ms. Washington is the Chief Operating Officer and CFO at the universities at Shady Grove. Ms. Washington previously served as Associate Provost for Financial Management and Chief of Staff at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Ms. Washington began her professional career in federal government at the National Security Agency. She began her career in higher education 24 years ago at Johns Hopkins University. Ms. Washington holds a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and a Master's of Business Administration. Michael Yehl, one of the original Latchkey Kids, has been researching and speaking about emotional trauma since the age of 16. His parents divorced in 1975 when he was age 10. At that time, virtually no resources existed to teach both parents how to parent from 2 different households. At age 22, as an unwed father, Mr. Yehl shared the same experiences as his father did as a single parent. 30 years after his parents' divorce, graduating with a master's in education, he taught for 16 years, seeing firsthand the impact fatherless children. At the age of 54, on the board of directors for the Rainbow Organization, Mr. Yehl shared his research, experience, and insights to help single dads to be more proactive in their children's lives. Carolina Avila is currently studying prerequisites courses for her general studies degree at Montgomery College. She is also a single mother to a 1-year-old son, Angel. Upon completing her required courses, she will begin the sonographic program. She hopes to make a difference in her community, helping women and children in need through her sonographic certification. She wants to help other women prepare for motherhood and have the tools needed to become successful. We're going to go ahead and start with our questions for the panel. If you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat and we will get to it after they have answered the panelists' questions. So right now we're going to talk about where they are now and the challenges and triumphs that they've had. So we're going to start with Deborah. What nurtured and encouraged you in your journey as a single parent?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. When I talk about what nurtured and encouraged me on my journey, it was how I was raised personally. Even though I did not come from a single family home, my parents instilled in me great values that I carried on into parenting with my 3 children. Also, my faith in reference to believing in God, and my inner self in reference to doing what's right. Being an education major, spending so many years in schools with multiple children, thousands of children, it was a natural fit as to how I wanted to raise my children as a single parent, giving them every opportunity that they could possibly have and to be able to support them behind.
Thank you. Nico, can you answer the same question? What nurtured and encouraged you in your journey as a single parent?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I would say for myself, I'll give a little context. So I was a teen mom. I have 2 beautiful daughters. I was a proud graduate of Baltimore City Public Schools. a proud graduate of a community college, and a proud graduate of the University of Maryland. So keeping all of that in mind, as a single parent, what nurtured me, what helped me, encourage me the most was knowing that what my children needed the most was absolutely free. So those things, because I didn't have a lot of resources as a teen mom, and it wasn't a lot of things around, so I had to take ownership of the value and the importance of creating memorable moments for them, for being able to give them time and attention that was so encouraging for me, because it was things that I know they would absolutely need as they move forward in life. The ability to share my experiences, the lessons learned, the life lessons that would take them along the way. So for me, there was so much value in encouragement and nurturing and being able to hopefully give them a leg up with some real life practical experience when I didn't have the opportunity to give them a leg up in a financial or other ways. So that really encouraged me to kind of hopefully give them a head start.
Thank you. Michael, what nurtured and encouraged you in your journey as a single parent?
Well, good morning, everyone. And like everybody else, thanks for having me. There's actually 2 or 3 people that nurtured and encouraged me. First was my mother. She got divorced in 1975, and that was at a time where, divorce was really not something of a common thing to happen. It happened to the rich and the famous. And my father struggled because, as you read in the bio, just a parent from 2 different households really didn't exist. And my mother took on 3 jobs to raise 3 boys and to do what it took to keep us with a roof over our head and food in our stomach. So when I became a single dad, I used her experiences, how she treated us and how she raised us, as the way to keep me going, to keep me encouraged. And of course, she also encouraged me as I went around. When I made the choice not to marry my son's mother, she applauded me instead of criticizing me. And the one thing she never did was criticize any of us for any of the choices we made. She may tell us she not approve. She may tell us that she didn't like our choices, but she never stopped loving us and she never stopped supporting us. And then my grandparents, and I just lost my grandfather in April at age 96, and they were of a generation where they had so much adversity in their lives between, World War II, the Depression, World War II, and everything that they went on, and they just locked it down and said, we're going to endure. And even when my grandmother passed in 2019, they were married 75 years. My grandfather said, you know what, I got to keep going. When my father passed away, their only son passed away in 2002. They both just huddled together and said, we're going to keep moving along. So as a single parent, raising my son, I worked multiple jobs. I put myself back through school, became a career education for 16 years. And he's the other one that just kept pushing me along. He always looked at me for support, and he always looked at me for guidance when things didn't make sense to him and when things seemed odd or awkward for him when dealing with parents from 2 different households. So all those combined just kept me moving forward. And fast forward, my son's 33 years old now, and he's got his own career. He's living in Indianapolis, and our relationship is stronger than ever. And when things pop up from time to time, I love the fact that he'll reach out and call me, which is just another fact where I feel that all the aggravation, the blood, sweat, tears, struggling for money, all paid off.
Thank you. Carolina, what nurtured and encouraged you in your journey as a single parent?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Carolina. This is such an honor to be here today. I know that we couldn't meet up and connect live all together, but I appreciate the time that everybody took to come online. With that being said, what nurtures and encourages me is seeing my son happy and having all his needs met. When I say that, it may be something very simple to everybody, but for me, I have absolutely no support. By that, I mean, I was adopted, coming from a broken home. My adopted mother had passed away recently due to cancer. So when I say I push hard, I really do. I wake up 3 a.m. in the morning, take my son to the babysitter, get into work by 5 a.m., get out by 2, and go home and study. I accomplished a 4.0 GPA. With that being said, my son is what pushes me and what I strive for, a home for him. That's my goal, is that giving him a home, and not a broken home, but a healthy home, even if that's done alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. I'm going to stay with you, Carolina, and you can answer the next question. Where did or do you draw your strengths?
So
I think you kind of answered that.
yes, so going back to that, when my marriage had ended, my mother had just passed away from cancer. So at that point, I knew that I only had myself to rely on, and I didn't have anybody. So at that point, I always encourage myself, look, I can do anything I put my mind to. And then when times get rough, or when I had an obstacle that came my way, I would just be patient and say, there is a solution. There is a solution. It may not come right now at this minute, may not come tomorrow, maybe a week from now, maybe a month from now, but I will keep pushing and I won't give up. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, where do you draw your strengths?
My strength comes from when my grandparents passed away. I drove by the cemetery when they were buried, and I looked at all of those markers in that cemetery, and I said, I'm going to get through this. Because all those people sitting out there or laying out there in the cemetery, they all had families that that are grieving the loss of that loved one that's there. And then I started thinking about all the single parents that are out there that have it either worse than I've had it or going through similar struggles. And every single day we put our feet on the floor and we get up and we get our kids ready for school. We make their lunches and we send them on our way. And we pray that they come home safe to us every night and that we come home safe to our children every night. So the strength comes from all of that. And then when I was teaching, my students provided that additional strength, especially if I knew that they were going through something very difficult, that they came to school every day with a smile on their face and interacting. And that's where I get the strength from. I was teaching at the time 9/11 had hit, and one of my students' dads had been in New York at the time it happened. And to see the angst on his face, not knowing if his dad was safe or not, but yet at the same time, the hope in his eyes that everything was going to be okay. So, and then the last thing I draw as a strength is my own son. Even today at 33, when he's struggling through some of the things we all went through when we were younger, that I feel that when I'm down or things are not going the way they're supposed to, that I can look in his eyes and know that he trusts me in my judgment, and knowing that if he's going through it and he's struggling, that anything I'm going through, we'll go through it together.
Thank you. Nico, where do you draw your strengths?
So as a single parent, I drew my strength primarily from the folks that did not believe that a teenage mom could be or would be successful. So I had my daughter back in the 80s. And in the 80s, in Baltimore specifically, there was a teen mom epidemic. Like, it was a big deal in the city. Folks were talking about it. And I just happened to find myself in that crowd, a part of that conversation. So my strength and resilience grew every day by my desire and drive to attempt to prove those folks wrong. And of course, it would have been nice to hear folks say things like, oh, she made a mistake, her life will be fine. But instead, I heard things like, oh my gosh, her life is ruined. So for me, I just kept hearing those words and turning them around and just being more and more encouraged and getting strength to keep moving. And there was always this inner strength of wanting to be more, to do more, and to be more for my children. Everything on that journey was remarkable for me because my outlook was, if I want it, I really have to go get it. I have to be confident enough to really go out there and get it. And it wasn't until recently, and when I say recently, I mean during this pandemic, it wasn't until recently that I realized that the power did not necessarily reside in my doing and being, but for me, that actual power resided in me choosing to move forward without fear and hesitation. So absolutely doing and being, we're going to move, but it was really not thinking about the fear or thinking about the consequences of things. It was always just moving and just keeping it going. So my strength came from baby steps that eventually led to big wins. You know, I shared with folks, and I don't share often. I mean, it was really challenging as a single parent raising kids and working full time. And it took me literally 17 years to complete my undergraduate degree. And when I say baby steps, I mean baby steps. So I finally completed college when my oldest daughter graduated from high school. And, you know, setting goals and moving forward, every goal that I accomplished was huge. It built my confidence a little bit more and more every time I accomplished something. So for those single parents struggling, hold on to your baby steps and keep moving. And as my strength grew, the folks around me helped to elevate that, because many of the folks around me believed in me and saw something in me that I didn't quite see in myself. And that always helped me to continue to grow and get more strength behind those opportunities. So at some point in my career, folks were giving me chances and opportunities because they saw that potential, that resilience, that grit, that hard work that I was putting in. And finally, my strength comes from my children, because I knew they were watching me. They were watching every step that I made. And it was very important for me to show them how to be a great leader and to live by example and to move by example. So my strength was in making sure that they saw a great role model. So thank you.
Thank you, Nico. Deborah, where do you draw your strengths?
I think I want to step back before I step forward. I was born in a very small town in Western Maryland in Allegheny County to a mom and a dad, a family of 4, and we came from a blue-collar background. You know, as I look back to that location where I was raised, the poverty in that area is so great, which I never realized as a child growing up. It's very interesting as my sisters and brother and I speak now, and we reference back to remembering what we ate on Friday night, what we did in going to church. But one thing I can say is the community that wrapped around us. I think your community is very vital in going back and tapping into the elders in that community to find out how they have been raised, how they've grown up, what they've experienced, and getting those opportunities to listen to individuals who have been so successful with little to nothing. But then when I look at that community base, and I came into the Baltimore area, mother of 3, married for nearly 20 years before I did go through a separation and divorce, tapping into the people that were around me to support my children. As Nico said, your children are looking at you. I know Michael was 9 when my former husband and I separated, and it was so hard on him. But I wanted to let him know that I was strong, that I could persevere. And I would go into school every day as a teacher, and a lot of the schools in which I taught, the poverty level was very high. And I looked at relationships I was building with my students' families and seeing what they were going through. And I'm thinking, you know what? I can do this. This is not that bad. I am not to this level of not being successful and not being able to support my children. So tapping on their experiences, I'm going back to experiences and opportunities, mentors that I built around myself, mentors that I built around my children, to be able to have different voices and different opinions coming in, but always the values that I was brought up in my home in Western Maryland, in that small little community where Friday night was like Friday night lights with football, and divorce was not heard of. And when I was spiraling down and thinking, I can't hold a marriage together, what's wrong with me? I had to take a look at myself and say, you're okay. Nothing is wrong with you. Take a look at what has happened within your family and be able to bounce back and to be able to support your children the way they need to be supported. You know, I went back when my middle daughter, who is now 40, I went back to college and got my master's when she was graduating from high school. Why? Because I hadn't done it before, and I wanted to show her that I could do them. I want to show my children they could do it. So my inner strength was to be able to be a role model for my children, to be able to pick them up when they fell down, to be able to wipe them off and let them know they were okay, and that I still supported them in their endeavors, whatever it might be, and making sure that their dreams that they had, that I was alongside them, and those dreams could come true.
Thank you, Beverly. Nico, what is your proudest parenting moment?
So I actually have two, if you don't mind. I'd like to share them really quick. So my first proud parenting moment is kind of a combination. So I am a first generation college graduate. I'm in my family, and I was the only college graduate in my family. So one of my proudest parenting moments was when both of my girls graduated from college. That was huge for me. So I'm very proud being a first generation grad, and then your children being the next and the only in the entire family. So awesome for them. I'm very proud. My second proudest moment was when I realized I did a really great job as a parent. So it was tough. And I would say, every parent's a great parent, of course. But for myself, I would say I was a super great parent. And why I say that? Because your kids may not like you when you're a solid parent.
Can everybody mute their phones, please, or computers?
Thank you. So for me, being liked by your kids, a lot of folks struggle with that and being their children's friends. I was not that parent. So I had really hard, fast, steady rules with consequences. And they had chore lists and laundry and all these things going on. So trust me, I was not very liked at home by my kids. But the proud moment came not too long ago when my oldest daughter said to me, she said, "Mom, I want to be everything that you are." And when she was younger, she was very clear about, I don't want to be anything like you. So a proud moment as a single parent to know that the hard work, the discipline, the rules, that actually paid off, because she said, it's not until now at this moment that I realized that the way you raised me had a huge impact on everything that is happening in my life right now. So for me, that was a very proud moment for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina.
My proudest moment as a parent would be when I ended my relationship with my ex-husband. With that being said, I did have to find my own living location for my son and I. He was very young. He was about 6 months at the time. And when I first found our location to move, I was very excited. I was very happy because my son and I finally had a place to stay. It's a basement. We have our kitchen, our bathroom, our room. But when I walked in, it was the best feeling ever, to finally have our place. But as I stepped in the room, it was empty. I didn't have anything, nothing. No crib, no bed, no clothes, nothing. I'm telling you, nothing. So when I had moved in, yes, I signed the paperwork and said, okay, this is our home. But I had to make our home a home. And that was the very first time I actually can recall having a home. Being brought up, as a foster kid, moving house from house, I was so used to moving around. And with my ex-husband's relationship, it just didn't work out. And I wanted my son to be in a happy and healthy home. So this was my time to provide for my son a fresh start. I didn't know how to get everything because it was something new, a totally new start. So what I ended up doing was going online, doing some research for cribs, baby clothes, baby toys. And I even went out of my way. It didn't matter how far the drive was. I remember one time I told this young lady I would meet her, and the drive was about 4 hours away. The 4 hours was a long drive, but she had everything. She had a baby crib, baby toys, baby clothes, everything. So the drive was worth it. It was long, but when I came back, my son was just so happy. He saw a big box of toys. He could not stop playing with the toys. He constantly was just playing and playing and playing and playing. And that long drive was worth it because I ended up providing everything for my son, not just the basics, but I was able to give him triple everything. And God has blessed me, of course, by allowing me to go to school and having scholarships to help me go back to school and prepare myself for a better future for my son. But I cannot tell you how devastating it was to start all over again and start with nothing and just be able to make an opportunity for myself and not step back. You know, you always have to push forward and know that there's always a resolution and a solution to a situation, but just don't give up. That's all I ever say to myself. Don't give up. No matter what, just keep pushing forward and things will work out. It doesn't matter how long the journey is, how much time it takes, but seeing my son happy, that's all that matters to me. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Michael, your proudest moments?
Well, I do have my proudest moment, but it's interesting that the moments are for us that have children that are raised and adults. When you look back, and I was just thinking, listening to Carolina's discussion, is I think every single parent, sometimes we look for those aha or those stepping stone proudest moments. And as I think back to when I bought my first house and I was working multiple jobs, I think every month when I managed to pay the mortgage, keep the lights on, put food in the fridge, kept the water running, and keep the struggles of that stuff that my son didn't have to worry about it. I think as all single parents can say, you should be proud every single month when you get the job done and you're able to keep your house afloat, and every month is a struggle. But my proudest moment is kind of self-serving. So my son made it to college, he graduated high school, proud moment, taking him to orientation and walking around the campus and everything that a college campus has to offer. His head's on a swivel, trying to take in all the information, buying posters for his dorm room and all of that stuff. And so it was time for the parents and the incoming freshmen to leave so the freshmen can now start their orientation. So that means I had to drive back 4 hours from Indiana back to Chicago. And as he's walking away from me, he didn't turn around and look back at me. And I'm like, really? Not one more look for the old man, thanks for everything, and I'm going to miss you. He just kept walking into the abyss with all of his fellow classmates. And I was a little put off by that. And I'm thinking, he didn't even look back. And then I stopped for a second and said, wait a minute. That's what every parent wants, that independence, that I got this, which means that all the struggles I went through, raising him as a single dad, co-parenting with his mother, and all the obstacles that all of us go through as single parents paid off because he didn't second guess anything. He just went right off into that abyss of the unknown without looking back to make sure dad would have his back. He always knew his old man had his back. But the fact that he didn't turn around and look at me, that one last wave or that mouthing I love you that I was a little annoyed about at the time, I quickly realized I did my job. I'm proud what I've accomplished, that my son feels confident enough and independent enough that he can just keep going.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to stick with you for this last question that I have. Is there one thing you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your parenting journey?
Well, I would say how emotionally exhausting it is. We are physically exhausted because of everything that we do, putting ourselves through school, and even if we don't have school, the multiple jobs we work, but it's emotionally exhausting. we have to be there to support our children. You know, we love our children unconditionally, but it's not about us. It's about them and how emotionally exhausting it is. And I can't even say, even with my mom looking back, and I could say it's emotionally exhausting and watching what she went through, but nobody ever said parenting would be emotionally exhausting. So with two traditional parent families or two parent families, I'm sure there's that, but you have each other to live off of, to work with. When you're a single parent, that emotional exhaustion, it just sucks the life out of you. And every day it's a deep breath and saying, all right, next day. So I would just say, from, if I had known back then to prepare for that emotional exhaustion, I would say there might have made some better choices in raising my son. But that emotional exhaustion, and to be able to recharge your batteries while you still keep being that parent. If I had gone back, is to tell my younger self, you're going to be emotionally exhausted, and to make sure that you take the time to work through those feelings, to work through those emotions, and to get those batteries recharged.
Deborah, I didn't ask you for your proudest moments. I apologize. What are your proudest moments?
No worries. And thank you so much. You know, when you take a look at a proud moment, you know, I'll again go back. My mom and dad never graduated from college. All four siblings in the family did, working my way through college, knowing they didn't have the money to be able to put me through. I can say to my three children, all graduated from universities. They all have families. They're all married. So check. But the big proudest moment I have with my children is watching them parent. To be able to watch them raise their children, and you know, you're sitting there and you're watching a response to one of your grandchildren from your son or your daughter, and say, "Oh my golly, that's the same thing I did with you." So to be able to let them showcase and warm my heart with their parenting skills, of listening, of setting boundaries, of high expectations, I think that's one of my proudest moments for all three of my children across the board.
Awesome. And you can answer, is there one thing you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your parenting journey?
I think that when I look back at my parenting journey, and I felt that I really did a decent job, my children's success, I think, well, you did a decent job, Debbie. Like Michael said, it's so emotional. All three of my children were swimmers. I had 3 kids, 3 different practices, 3 different pools, and it was like going up and down and all around. But having community there is important, but also seeking out professional guidance. You know, be a very good collaborator with your schools. Let your schools know the ups and downs of your kids. I think that's so important. But also, when you find that there might be some mental health issues that they need some other counseling or something on, go beyond the schoolhouse and go for professional help to be able to support your children as they grow up.
Thank you. Nico, is there one thing you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your parenting journey?
Yeah, so the one thing that I wish I would have done differently was to accept help and to ask for help when needed. Because for me personally, I think things would have played out slightly different if I had done that. In hindsight, I see, you know, that journey probably didn't have to be as rough as it was. And for me, it proved somewhat harmful in the end. For one, I gave this impression that I had it all together and that everything was good and that I was good. But really, as a single parent, everyone knows that is a single parent. The struggle is real. The work is hard. You're, like everyone has said, emotionally drained. So for me, giving that picture didn't lend itself to folks saying, how can I help you? So that in some ways prevented help from coming my way. Second, for me, I operated on a level that was my normal, that wasn't normal for most folks. I was operating on adrenaline for years. And where the harmful piece of that came in for me was that when everything stopped and the goals were accomplished and I didn't really have a next goal in sight, I honestly did not know what to do with myself. I almost felt like I retired from life, but I wasn't retired. So it was this whole idea of going, moving, and I didn't have anything else in sight at that time. So it took me for a loop. So it was kind of harmful, because if I had asked for help, I think I would have not gotten to that level of normalcy that I had to come down from. And then finally, I would say, the load definitely would have been lighter, and asking for help if you need it. I totally advise it for anyone in general, but any single parent, because it's going to help you throughout the journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina, is there one thing you know that you wish you knew during your parenting journey?
One thing in particular would be to have a home for my son, regardless of marital status or family, network, or whoever it may be that you decide to have a future with. I just feel that not having a home and stability for my son at the time, at the ending of my marriage, really brought me down, and felt that I wasn't efficient enough to be a mother. And I have wished, with my whole heart, to have a home for my son. That's my dream. And I just wish for any parent out there who's looking to become, a mother or father in the future, in the near future, just to have stability, just to be able to have your own place to call a home. That way your son or your daughter can grow up and feel secure. My goal for the future is just to help women and children to have that stability, whether in marriage or without marriage, because I know that the struggle is there. Raising a child is not an easy task, especially when there's instability, whether problems at home, not having a place to stay, finances, whatever it may be. That's what keeps pushing me forward, to help women and children in the future, and just to be able to be a role model to those that are looking for inspiration, that are looking for what their next step is when they're lost in that situation of not knowing what their next step is. I want to be able to give back to the community. And I know that my son will have that in the future, because I'm really pushing hard, and I don't plan on giving up. I plan to keep pushing until I meet my goals. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and go see if there's questions in the chat. I do have one, and anyone can take it. What advice would the panelists offer to Montgomery College to serve parenting students more effectively?
As an educational institution, I think it's important that all forms of education, not only colleges, but elementary schools, high schools, have resources available for single parents. In a traditional two-parent family, you can rely on each other's spouse to get what you need. But when you're a single parent, and I talked about emotionally exhausting, to those single parents that just sometimes, if it's a new divorce or even if it's been several years, taking your kids to school, or as an adult going back to school, as I did to get my degree, any and all resources to help single parents to just give them that support and that virtual hug, or that feeling like everything they're doing is going to be okay and all other struggles is going to be worth it. Now with technology the way it is, things that can be done online or video, or support services that could be brought into Montgomery College that the parents can go to either between classes, or resources that they can do outside of the home. So the more support services or support that you can give your single parents, the more tools they are armed with, and that also gives them encouragement to keep moving forward.
To tap in on with Michael, I'm going to say also the counseling services that you offer, that they are readily available. That if someone needs to be able to talk to someone, it's like then, it's not 2 days from now. And also a person's physical health and their mental health has to have a check-in barometer on it. So make sure as you're taking care of an individual physically, making sure that they are healthy in that case, make sure their mental health is in check also. What we're going through right now is causing a lot of angst with people, with anxiety, depression. We know that. And to check in, maybe not wait for a student to check in with you. I'm doing a big ask here though, but you check in with your students. Whether you see them virtually, you see them socially distanced one-on-one, I think you can kind of tell if somebody, they may say they're okay, but they may not be okay. So ask those questions.
Hi, this is the only thing I would add to Deborah and Michael is with the resource categories, a lot of single parents and a lot of times have to work double jobs and take care of little ones, and it's a real struggle. So I would say, I'm sure you all are doing things to raise scholarship dollars and support for students, but possibly if there's an opportunity to put forward any special campaigns and or funding for resources, sponsorship that really focuses on single parents, because that will tremendously help with the education and just being able to study and focus. So I would just say, whatever we can do and folks like ourselves can do to help lift up those types of campaigns to support single parents, I'd advocate for it and absolutely join to find ways to build up those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina, one second, I gotta go back up to repeat it. What advice would the panelists offer to Montgomery College to serve parenting students more effectively?
Okay, so I would say having a prayer group, basically for those who are religious or need extra push to continue on. I feel that faith is very important, and having a community of prayer. I know that I personally have myself a prayer group every Friday. We meet up virtually. We discuss our week. We discuss how we are emotionally, and we have prayer requests, and we pray for one another. So I feel like having a group of prayer would bring the community closer, and it would allow us to grow in faith and to allow us to push our goals and not only feel that, we are doing it by ourselves, but that we have others supporting us. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. We have a question for Deborah. How difficult was it raising a determined, talented athlete like Michael as a single parent, along with your other children? And did you have to focus on making sure you gave each child equal attention?
Yes, I have 3 children, Hillary, Whitney, and Michael. And when someone comes to me and says, great job, I saw Michael doing this, I'll say, well, thank you very much. All 3 of my children are amazing children. So raising Michael and raising my 3 girls, it was not easy. We always applaud my eldest daughter, Hillary, for being kind of the pioneer in the sport of swimming. If she did not start the family in swimming, you probably wouldn't have seen Michael Phelps in the pool. You would see him on lacrosse field. So raising all 3 of my children as a single parent at 3 different practice levels, at 3 different pools, I go back on community. The importance of community was so important to me because I was teaching in another county as I was living in the neighboring county. So raising Michael in the limelight for nearly 20 years was not an easy task for the entire family. And I want to say that during his, what we call speed bumps that he had in the road, when he was arrested for his DUI, I was a principal of a schoolhouse at that time. I was disciplining children in my schoolhouse. And my young men would meet me at the hallway and say, so, Miss Phelps, your son was arrested last night. And so I say, yes, he was. Can we talk about it? So my son's misfortunes and his celebratory times were used as teaching moments with my children in my schoolhouse. There was nothing I could hide from, that was on the news. So my life was an open book. As a single parent, 1, as an educator, 2, as a principal, 3. So everything my kids did, especially Michael, was brought to the schoolhouse because my young men and women brought it up to me. So they were learning tools, but they learned that Michael is human, as we all are human. We're all going to have our ups, we're all going to have our downs. And that is something that we all have to realize as parents, as we pick our children up and wipe them off. to be able to hurry them along to go on and be successful until they fall down again. So it was not easy raising a 28 Olympic medalist, world-class swimmer. It wasn't easy at all.
Thank you, Deborah. Next question is, what resources are supporting you now during this time of COVID? Anyone can answer.
I mean, resources in terms of financial, emotional?
They don't specify, but I say whatever type of resources that was provided to you during the COVID, if you like to share.
So with COVID, I wrote 2 articles around my website. One was coping with COVID for just single parents in general, and then there's one for single dads specifically. And I just think it's real important with those resources that you ferret them out. They're available online, and then you just gotta, when you look at those resources, depending on where you get them and depending who's writing them, you've got to take everything with a grain of salt and apply it to your family dynamic, because not every suggestion is going to work as written, and not every suggestion is foolproof. So you've got to look at your family, look at what you're going through for COVID, whether that, I mean, Deborah, I can't even imagine a COVID-19 trying to take Michael to all of his meets and all of his, I can't imagine what you would do. So you can kind of see how that all struggles, but you've got to find those resources and adapt them. And don't try to adapt them all at once, because if you adapt them all at once, your kids are going to go, what are you doing and what did you read? So if you take one and you try and incorporate it into your family dynamic, the one thing I put in there is reenact dinner time conversation. Sit down at the table, put all of your electronic devices in a basket on off or mute so they can't be disturbed, and engage in a conversation. And those conversations have to start with the adult. Age appropriate, of course, but start it with the adult. And the first few times you do it, you're probably going to get a lot of head nods and a lot of shoulder shrugs and little discussion, but you start talking about things that are impacting you with COVID and impacting how you do your day-to-day stuff. It's something as simple as grocery shopping. And at one point, something as simple as going to buy toilet paper, you start having those concerns, and then your kids will start saying, okay, the grown-up is sharing with me, then maybe I can share with them. And you start building that trust. But I grew up at a time, even when my parents divorced, we still had dinner time at the table. And a lot because of the way our society is and the way our lives are, and parents who work multiple jobs, sitting down at the table at dinner time is just not easy. It's easier said than done. Now with COVID and being home more often, it's a great opportunity to sit down with the kids, even your younger kids. You can have those very simple discussions about COVID and how it's bothering them, and brainstorm together as a family on how to overcome some of those obstacles as this pandemic continues to progress.
May I add, in reference to, I'm going to say parents in general. I said this earlier on one of my responses, the importance of your school community. We know that during these times that we're all struggling in some capacity at some level. And a schoolhouse is looking completely different for our children. And we know the importance of what schools do for our children, to be able to bring them together with friends and their teachers, and to be able to have them to have a resource to be able to vent. Our kids don't have that now, but we as parents, I'm with my educator's hat now, we as parents have to make sure that we are supporting the new type of education that's happening right now. And if you do not have the resources that you need as a parent, if it's a device, if it's a time with your teacher, I encourage you to contact the school, working for a school system in reference in this state, who want to touch every child in which they oversee throughout a regular school year. It's so important for that school to be part of a child's life now. So I am just going to be a big advocate for parents, single, not single, to make sure you are tapping into the school, and to make sure that you let your kids see that the educational process is important now, and also that we are struggling as parents too. So I'm going back on my word, family and community. We're all in this together as a family. We're all in this together as a community, and we have to rely on each other. Thank you.
What I would add, this is Nico, what I would add is trying to kind of switching the question around a little bit on what resources are supporting me. And I would change that to, I am currently during COVID using myself as a resource. So I have been actively reaching out to folks through social media, any platforms, and having conversations about how I can help, how my experiences can help, how I can share inspirational moments to kind of have folks thinking differently and helping them through the struggle, just based on some things that I've learned over time. So I've been trying to find ways to be a resource to others in time of need and to be a mentor and to help. So I've been fortunate enough that during this time, I've been able to continue to work from home and support folks, students at our university, but I've been trying to spread that across different platforms just because I think folks need it right now, and it's really tough and challenging for a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question, which is, employers and educational institutions are all learning to operate remotely, and in some ways it may help single parents be with their children and still work or learn. How do you see these changes being adopted for improving opportunities for single parents after this pandemic is over?
What I would say, having working at a higher education institution, is that over the years it's been a struggle for some folks to embrace this idea of working from home and working remotely. And I think now that many institutions have demonstrated that it is possible, and folks can be just as productive away, I think what we might see in the future are more opportunities for folks to be much more flexible to allow for this to continue, because there are a lot of advantages in it. So I think we're just seeing, a shift in how we operate and how we think. So I think the platform will be, more folks will be receptive to the idea of continuing to work remotely and have that balance out for a number of people in different industries. Thank you.
But I can say in reference to this remote working situation for a family, I think it's important for, as Michael was talking about, coming together and talking at the dinner table, to be able to put structure around their day. Parents have to do work. Children have to do their work, which is schoolwork. So to be able to work collaboratively as a family to set up your workspace and almost like your office hours. So make it a teachable moment for your children, that your office, this is preparing you for your job later on. It sounds kind of far-fetched, but you can take some of these things that we're doing now and make it educational in reference to, this is your desk where you're going to be having your supplies for when you meet with your teacher. And this is my desk where I have to meet with my calls and my conference calls and my boss. So I think that's something that we can look forward to and to strengthen. I know that I heard my son the other evening speak, and he talked about structure in your life. Even though we're kind of helter-skelter to a degree of not being able to meet people and be with people, we have to have structure in our life to be able to manage our day. And may I say one thing in reference to reaching out to people? Do not forget those who are our senior citizens or elder. This is a perfect opportunity to teach our children service and to be able to call a 92-year-old grandmother or grandfather or neighbor to check in on them. So it's a way to be able to teach children at a different level.
I think with COVID and everybody being at home, and to support what Deborah had said, boundaries are real important in life in general. And by being home, especially when you're at home and you only have one computer for your whole family, not everybody has their own laptop, their kids. So sometimes you have to share that computer, but you create a new structure and a new set of boundaries, and you work within that structure, and just to understand that it's not easy. Especially when you have teenage kids and just developmentally, it's all about them anyway. And they need to do some homework, or they need to talk to their friend via Skype or Zoom. is that remember, you're the parent first, you're their friend second, and you gotta adhere to the structures. You if it's wrong, it's always wrong. We always we laugh at our 2-year-old for something that is inherently wrong, but we laugh because it's so funny coming out of a 2-year-old. But you've got to keep that same facade as a parent saying it's wrong. So while you want to laugh hysterically at something your 2-year-old did, as a parent, you got to say, nope, that's wrong, and we've got to discipline them. Same thing with COVID and being at home, is that your children need to understand that here are the boundaries and here are the rules. And from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., mom or dad is working. I can't be disturbed. So, and I used to joke with my son and said, unless you're bleeding out your eyes, lost an appendage, or dying, I can't be disturbed. And we were before the age of text and cell phones. That was all in its infancy. So I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to deal with that. I really have great empathy for parents raising children in this technology age. It's got to be very difficult, but boundaries have to exist. And just as our parents said to us, well, Johnny's mom can do it. Well, I'm not Johnny's mom, or I'm not Johnny's dad. You've got to keep the same thing. As single parents, we carry a level of guilt because of our situation, whether because we're struggling financially, there's only one active parent, or even if it's 2 active parents in 2 different households, the fact that dynamic is different, we carry that guilt, and sometimes we put the boundaries aside out of guilt. So COVID has brought the family back together to create those boundaries and to make sure that those boundaries are here. They can be flexible, but you got to keep those boundaries. And I'm fortunate that my son respected that, but I didn't. We didn't have COVID. But I just told him, I said, "Hey, Dad's got to work. I can't really be disturbed unless there's really a problem." But I also made time as a parent in that structure that I took that break to make sure the kids felt like that we weren't ignoring them. So there's that balance, that give and take. I think COVID, the blessing out of COVID, if you want to call it a blessing, is I think families and single parent families are going to be able to reconnect and create that home environment that might have been missing because we were taking them to all their sports. We're working all the different jobs at different locations, depending on others to do what now we can do because we're home.
But during those breaks, Michael, and don't forget, everybody, it's time to smile, to love, to hug, to high five, to celebrate, and to recognize even the smallest accomplishment a child makes. Remember, we are the adult, and we need our space too, but we are modeling for our children, and they have to feel that love and that affection and kisses and hugs. Yes, just send the love to them in any way that you do.
Yep, they're always watching us.
Always, always.
I would like to share too, from my experience from the transition from campus to online, was right in the middle of my term, pretty much. So I was taking a statistics class, which I remember I was just holding on. Like, statistics was very difficult for me. And I had to go to the tutoring center at least 2-3 times a week, which meant I had to take my son to a babysitter or take some extra time out of my schedule from work just to go to the tutoring center so I could pass the course. Once that transition happened from campus to online, then I found online resources for tutoring. And when I realized that there was online tutoring, that just changed the game. I was able to go online the minute I needed help. I didn't have to drive out of my way, like stay in traffic for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, or even arrive to the tutoring center just still waiting for somebody because there's a line of students and only 2 tutors. I was just so happy to have that one-on-one attention with my tutor and just be able to really understand the problems that I didn't get. So at the end of the day, I was able to pass my class with an A, but it was not easy. I was on that tutoring session on the computer, I would say like every other day. I would study. I would even have my son on my lap while I was doing like my homework. And the nice part that I really enjoyed is having my son's company, because I didn't like, working all day and then taking time to take him to another babysitter just to go to tutoring. So the fact that I was at home still being able to achieve my goals and still being able to have my son by my side just made me really happy. And now I have confidence in the future to take online courses. I'm not fearful of whether it's online or on campus anymore. I just feel like that transition really gave me the confidence to know that online is the best way to go if needed. So.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I want to say thank you to the panelists for being here. And thanks for all the comments that were in the chat. I appreciate it. And I will forward it to Beverly.
I forgot I was on mute. Well, thank you. Thank you. I just want to again just thank Deborah, Nico, Michael, and a special thank you, a personal thank you to Carolina as well. Because I know Carolina, I've worked with her, and she trusted me to know that she'd be okay doing this, that she can handle it. And she just did an excellent job, particularly for someone who's so young in their single parent life. And so I just want to thank everyone again for participating. I hope that all of you have heard something that inspired you, something that encouraged you, something that reminded you that as a single parent, you can do this and that there are resources out there, that your grit as a single parent has been strengthened. So thank you very much.